By the time Ismail Bey realized that the Sierra Leone Civil War wouldn't remain a non-issue for him forever, his life had already been flipped upside down by the conflict. The first time he truly began to understand what was happening in his own country was when refugees began to pass through his hometown of Mogboma and talk about how their families had been killed and how their houses had been burned. The refugees refused the offers to stay because they knew that the war would reach the peaceful town eventually. The children of the refugees jumped at sounds of chopping wood and stones being thrown, and it was evident that the refugees were all suffering from the memories of what they had gone through. Ishmael had never experienced war, and had full reason to believe that the horrors he had heard about were simply exaggerated. His childhood was filled with music, most specifically rap music. His brother Junior and his friends Mohammed and Taloy had formed a rap group when he was 8. They became obsessed with the style of music after hearing it on a foreign television at Ishmael's father's workplace. The memories of his love of music were one of the things that kept him centered while he was on the run, and allowed him to breach the barrier the war had created in his mind and remember his childhood during his rehabilitation. Music for Ishmael throughout the story was a symbol of his childhood innocence and the joy he had had as a child. Ishmael Baya was born in the African country of Sierra Leone in 1980. Ishmael's first encounter with the war was when he was just a 12-year-old boy in January of 1993. His father and mother were separated, and the series of stepmothers that his father had led to Ishmael having a weak relationship with his father. His father had paid for his schooling, but had recently decided to stop funding his education, which led to Ishmael, his older brother Junior, and his younger brother Ibrahim to be withdrawn from school. They started visiting their mother every few days as opposed to only on weekends and holidays. The trio of Ishmael, Junior, and Toloy left their hometown to travel 16 miles on foot to Matrujong and compete in their friend's talent show. They stuffed their pockets with rap cassettes and notebooks filled with lyrics that they had been writing. As Ishmael said on page 7, since we intend to return the next day, we didn't say goodbye or tell anyone where we were going. We didn't know what we were leaving home, never to return. The boys only left because of their passion for music, and it ended up potentially saving their lives. Their hometown was attacked soon after their departure. When they heard news of the attack on Mogbuemo, they had a slight lead on the rebels and were in a much better position than they would have been had they stayed. Ishmael's original group, along with some new friends in Mashujong, fled the town when it was attacked by rebels. They had a close encounter when they returned seeking food and ended up hungrier than when they decided to risk their lives. The boys spent weeks wandering aimlessly through the woods, stealing food to get by. Another close encounter with After another close encounter where the rebels almost took their lives, the boys managed to escape and walk back to the village where they had spent most of their hunger times. As they walked, they attempted to avoid villages that had become paranoid of outsiders. However, a group of muscular men hiding in bushes surprised them one day after they had left a forested area near a village they avoided. The boys were captured and brought before the chief of the village. When the boys tried to explain that they were not rebels or spies, the crowd was enraged and demanded that they be drowned. However, while the guards were searching the pockets of the boys, one of them found a rap cassette in Ishmael's pocket. The music was played before the whole crowd, and it was clear that the chief was thinking. Ishmael explained that they were rappers and dancers and used to attend school in Machujong. Upon hearing this information, a boy that was from the village of Machujong was called for, and he was able to identify Ishmael and his friends. The music that Ishmael possessed in his pocket allowed the chief, who was ready to execute him as a rebel, to see that he wasn't dealing with a dangerous group of enemy spies. Instead, he was dealing with children, young boys that just wanted to find food and peace. The rap cassettes in this encounter were synonymous with boyishness and childhood. Knowing that the rebels would eventually reach the village, Ishmael and his group decided to leave. They headed for a village named Kamator that Gabriela's aunt lived in. For 3 months, they worked in the farms of Kamator and experienced peace that they hadn't felt since the start of the war. They spent most of their time working, except for their afternoon breaks. Eventually, all their hard work went to ruin, as the rebels came and people were forced to desert their farms. Ishmael was separated from his friends during the attack, and it was the last time that he ever saw his older brother. Ishmael wandered through the forest alone for a month, before running into some boys that he recognized from school in Mashujong. They had not been close friends, but during the time of war, any familiar face was more than welcomed. After receiving guidance from an old man in a village, they headed for a village by the ocean named Yele. They were welcome to stay in a hut with a fisherman who provided food and safety for them upon finding his home. One night, the mother of the host came to warn them that the people in the village had learned of their existence and were on their way to capture Ishmael and his friends. They were brought before the chief of the village, who planned to kill them. He commanded his men to undress the boys, and while the order was carried out, the rap cassettes fell out of Ishmael's pocket. The chief called for a cassette player to be brought. One man accused them of being mercenaries because of their possession of the foreign objects, but the chief replied with, These boys are no mercenaries. Look at them, page 66. It was the first time that he had referred to them as boys rather than devils, which was a clear expression of his recognition of their humanity. The music was played before the entire town, and the chief demanded that the boys dance to it like they used to. Ishmael did not enjoy this, but he found himself thinking deeply about the words of the song and the meanings that they conveyed. The chief realized that he was dealing with kids and was amused. He told everyone that they were just children looking for safety, and everything was a misunderstanding. In this event, the cassettes and rap music were another example of youthful spirit that could not be crushed by the paranoia caused by the war. While the men were ready to execute Ishmael and his friends upon seeing them, the music they possessed made them realize that they were dealing with children. Ishmael didn't enjoy the music and dancing as he normally would because of the situation he was under. This shows how war in dark times can significantly alter people's perspective on things, and things that they might have enjoyed in their past lives. The boys were picked up by government soldiers and brought to Yele, and they believed that they would finally find peace. However, they soon found out that they would be enlisted in the army. Clothes were distributed to all the boys in the army. While Ishmael was putting on his new shorts, a soldier took his old pants and threw them into a fire. Ishmael's rap cassettes had been in the pocket of those pants, one of the last things he had to hold on to from his childhood. The burning of the rap cassettes symboled the end of Ishmael's innocence. The one thing he had always had to connect with his childhood was gone, and his boyhood burned with it. During the years to follow, Ishmael experienced all of the dark horrors of war firsthand. It seemed as there was nothing left of the child he had once been. After 2 years fighting in the war, Ishmael was 15 years old. The UNICEF came and told him and his friends that they were done fighting and they were going to find another life. They were taken to Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. Ishmael began to withdraw from drugs and experienced night terrors about his past as a soldier. On page 149, Ishmael tries to recall his memories of a young boy. I would desperately try and think about my childhood, but I couldn't. The war memories had formed a barrier that I had to break in order to think about any moment in my life before the war. Esther, a nurse where Ishmael is rehabilitating, was one of the only people to get him to open up, albeit reluctantly at first. She brought him a Walkman and cassette tape, and Ishmael displayed his first signs of happiness in a long time. She held onto the Walkman, telling him that she didn't want it to get stolen and that he could come back any time to listen to it. The nurse knew music was important to Ishmael, and this led to him coming back consistently and opening up more about what he was going through. Music was the reason that his rehabilitation went as smoothly as it did. The music allowed him to breach the barrier that the war had formed in his mind, and gave him the opportunity to be a child again. Muhammad and Ishmael listened to a Bob Marley cassette tape together at the hospital after Ishmael's uncle was found to be living in the city. The lyrics told them, "Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright." The music was representative of a positive future for the both of them, away from the horrors of their past and looking towards a new future with a real potential for them to carry out normal lives. One night, Ali, a relative of Ishmael, convinced Ishmael to sneak out with him and go dancing in a pub. Again, music makes an appearance, this time with Ishmael experiencing real happiness. Ishmael traveled to New York to speak at the United Nations on behalf of the Sierra Leone child soldiers. He said that his perceptions of New York prior to his arrival had been shaped by rap music, which shows how music can change the way we see and imagine things. At the end of the presentations, the children from all the different countries at the meeting knew it would be their last time seeing each other. They knew they weren't returning to peaceful places, but they had each other for that time. They put their arms around each other and danced and sang songs from their homelands. The music was representative of a temporary state of bliss. It was a way out, a way to forget about all the horrible things that the children had experienced in all different corners of the world. The music linked them to their childhoods, the songs to their past, and for a moment the darkness melted away. Throughout this entire book, music was the one thing that Ishmael had to hold on to. Even when he went through the unimaginable events during the war, music allowed him to reconnect with his past self during rehabilitation. Music was a way of linking the children to their past and a way of reminding them that there is always a future.